Hello everyone. Today's video is going to be a sequel to a video that I made about 8 months ago about my experience in the National Health Service accident emergency ward of the hospital. In this video I'm going to talk about a somewhat similar experience that I had in South Korea, where I had to see a doctor for a very similar reason and spend about the same amount of time consulting with that doctor, but had a very different experience on the surface. And although it's probably not story worthy by itself, I thought just as a kind of epilogue to that last video, it would be a shame not to comment on it, just because of the comparison seems to be pretty accurate. It seems like a pretty good comparison to make between these two kinds of health system. I'm not going to try to draw any conclusions from this comparison necessarily. I think it's an interesting comparison, but not. It's just two data points, right? It's just one data point from England and one data point from Korea, and obviously not a robust enough comparison to actually draw any conclusions in itself. But I thought it was somewhat interesting how different the experience was going through a similar kind of thing, but in another country where the health system was different. They actually do have a nationalized health service in South Korea. It's called the NHI, and it's compulsory for all citizens of Korea to pay in, I think it's 5% of their income into a compulsory health insurance that is then they can then draw on when they need any kind of emergency help. Strangely enough, it doesn't cover any terminal illness, but anyway, all of that is irrelevant somewhat because I'm not a citizen of Korea. I don't have any health insurance in Korea, so I had to pay out of pocket for this. I did have travel insurance, but it ended up being so cheap that it was not covered. It was covered by the deductible, so I wasn't able to claim back the money. The reason that I think the comparison is a good one is because I had to go to the hospital for a very similar reason, at a similar sort of urgency. And I saw a consultant, a doctor, for a similar amount of time. The amount of time that I spent face to face with a specialist, the same kind of specialist, was very similar. When you see a doctor, it's not usually for more than 10 minutes or so, and that was the same for both of these. Aside from that, of course, it's a different country, it's a different hospital, it was a different time of day. The city itself in Korea was actually much more populated than the city that I went to in England for my treatment, that the hospital was located in. This may not seem like such a big deal, but it actually, I think, was very helpful in the case of the Korean hospital, since the hospital was itself on top of an underground station, so it was extremely convenient to get to. That all I had to do was go up an escalator from the train platform, go through the barriers and go up a lift, and then I was in the hospital. So that was extremely convenient compared to in England, where you have to drive there and park, and then the car park's very big and you have to find your way back to the hospital. But that's the kind of thing that it's probably due to the fact it was in a very heavily populated city. The reason that I went to this Korean hospital in particular is because it was sort of well known for its international policy, I suppose you could call it. So me not being able to speak Korean, it was helpful for me to go up to the desk and speak to the receptionist in English. And the woman who was at the international desk actually became my translator for the rest of my visit. So in addition to seeing a doctor, I had this additional service of having a translator with me who never left my side while I was in the hospital, from the point where I went in and talked to her initially to when I left the building. She was there translating every single transaction that I had. The amount of time that I spent in the hospital was very much less than the amount of time I spent in the English A&E. For one thing, I didn't even have to go through accident and emergency. I just went up to the international desk, I explained what was wrong, she called the specialist, and we went straight up to the specialist's office. When we got there was one person already seeing the specialist, so I had to just wait in the waiting room for that one person. They told me, this other person's gone in ahead of you, when she comes out, you can go talk to the specialist. That was it. So I waited in this extremely, it wasn't extremely luxurious or anything, but compared to my experiences of hospitals have been in England, it was a very clean, very comfortable waiting area. It was like the lobby of a hotel almost. Not really a luxurious hotel, just in its cleanliness and facilities and decoration. It was just like a nice interior of a building. It didn't have any hospital kind of looking furniture or decoration. It was very pleasant, and there was a TV and water cooler, toilet, everything you'd want. And it was just a very nice place to wait in. The whole time I was waiting, the translator, the woman I had met when I walked in, was just sitting next to me, and she was explaining to me what was going on the TV. I think she was just trying to distract me, calm me down. Not that I really needed it, but she was just being very nice by explaining to me what the people on the TV were talking about in Korean. The inside of the doctor's office was similarly a very nicely decorated room. It didn't really seem much like a hospital, except there was some equipment there. It was like like the office of any kind of business, any non-hospital looking business. It was just a nice office. So I talked to the specialist for a little while. We did a little simple procedure, and when I was finished talking to the doctor, I just left the room, and they printed off a bill on a piece of paper showing how much money I was supposed to pay them. I should have mentioned before that they didn't make me fill in any paperwork at all. Pretty much, they just wanted to look at my passport. I didn't have my passport, so they just looked at a picture of my passport to get a few details of that, and they didn't care about my address in Korea. They didn't ask for a deposit or anything. I just walked in. They gave me the treatment after a small waiting period, and then when I walked out, they gave me the bill, and I was surprised that it cost much less than any dental procedure that I've ever had done. It cost less than getting a filling done in the UK. It was the equivalent of about £70. Actually, I think it was exactly £70 when converted into English money. And I was happy to pay that, and I couldn't believe that it cost that much to get such an amazing service. That's definitely how much I'd be willing to spend in the UK if I had to pay out of pocket every time I saw someone at accident and emergency. After I got back to England and I decided to make this video, I decided to look into the Korean health service and look into the hospital just to make sure that none of my bill was directly subsidised by the Korean government or any taxpayers or anything like that. Obviously, I can't tell for sure what subsidies are applied to the hospital in general and their operations, so I really don't know how much the real cost of the procedure and the consultation was, but what was charged to me was £70, and I don't believe that was subsidised by anybody else, directly at least. If I were doing a thorough analysis of the philosophy of the National Healthcare Service and the ethics of it, then we could perhaps talk about how obviously some people can't afford £70 for a consultation at the doctor. I'm not here to make an argument either way on that front. I'm just giving my experience as an appendix to my last video where I talked about my experience in the UK hospital. The low price and the experience in general indicates to me that whatever this hospital was doing, and possibly all Korean hospitals as an extension, I really don't know, but at least this hospital seemed to be run very efficiently, very, very well, very professional, and it was as pleasant an experience as a hospital visit really could be. I should have said right at the start of this video that I'm fine, you don't have to worry about me, I haven't got any medical problems, my baby's fine. I can assure you that if it were anything even remotely serious, I wouldn't be making this video right now. While I was in Korea, I was also thinking about making a video about unrealistic beauty standards, since that was something that is somewhat more obvious in Korea than it is in England, at least to me. I haven't figured out exactly what I'm going to say, so I may not make the video at all if I can't figure it out properly, but let me know if you have any thoughts on that, and of course let me know if you have any thoughts on this video. It's really just my experience. I'm not trying to draw any conclusions from it exactly. I couldn't really, since I don't understand the Korean health service that well, so I can't really compare the two health services and say that one is better or worse than the other, since I don't understand Korean one, and to be honest, I don't really understand the UK one that well. So, all the same, if you do have any thoughts, and I'm sure some of you do, let me know in the comments, and I'll read all of them, and I'll even reply to a few. Until next time, have a good week or day or evening, whatever it is for you, and I will see you soon.